In the modern world, the role attributed to the mind is often misrepresented. We treat it like a calculator, to think faster, to analyze more, to evaluate and cling to more possibilities. But the mind primarily exists to guide human life, not to produce. Like a compass, it doesn't create north, it points north. It doesn't build the path itself, it reminds you which way to go. Neuroscience shows us that the captive part of the brain, the part where we think, has already experienced the past after the decision-making process. As in the experiments of the renowned neurologist Benjamin Libet, the electrical preparation in the brain begins seconds before the person says, "I've decided." Therefore, the mind is often not the architect of the decision, but the narrator. It transforms what happened into a logical story. This information should be structured as follows. The mind does, but it doesn't know. What matters is whether there is a direction. For a physicist, this distinction is crucial. An equation produces a result, yes, but what determines which equation we write is often a sense of direction. As Einstein often pointed out, the most fruitful moments come not from mathematics, but from visual and legal thinking. The mind does the programming here, but intuition determines which programming makes sense. Now think of it more simply. If our brain is a radio station, sending waves into the universe, our heart is a mega-frequency network made up of 5,000 different stations. Consider this. A fisherman casts his line and waits for a fish to come. Catching fish this way is possible, but very limited. What if the same fisherman went out to sea with a giant net 5,000 meters long? Which method would catch more fish? The giant one, of course, because the net increases the possibilities. This is exactly what the manifestation is, not just waiting for fish, but a wider net scan, a larger frequency range, creating more possibilities. Our intuition also helps us build this network. The brain works like a calculator, but the heart chooses which possibility is truly right for us. Therefore, manifestation is not just desire, but correctly adjusting our inner frequencies. The situation in daily life is no different. People often say, "I thought about it a lot, but I still made the wrong decision." The problem is not actually doing too much, but doing something wrong. The compass's task is not to plan all the paths. It is to answer the question, is this the right path? As the mind performs calculations, complexity increases, but no calculation is smooth if the direction is not clear. In psychology, this is called analysis paralysis. As the number of options increases, the ability to make decisions weakens. Because the mind becomes clear, not by being fed data, but by adapting to understanding. If there is no meaning, even the most accurate data will not be satisfying. Therefore, sometimes the best option cyclically becomes the heaviest option internally. The compass has an interesting property. If you constantly shake it, it won't work. The mind is the same. A mind that is constantly on alert, constantly thinking, constantly comparing, cannot point in the right direction. Only when it calms down, that is, when it is given space to perform its task, does it return to its natural function. Therefore, the most accurate ideas usually come to you in a calm moment, in the shower. Because mental programming stops, it remembers the direction. No system in nature relies solely on calculation. Birds don't plan the possibility of migration. Magnetic fields align. A river doesn't program which stone to place where. It adapts to the slope. The human mind works similarly. Calculation is for details. Direction is for survival and finding meaning. Therefore, the biggest misconception about the mind is, the more I think, the more correctly I live. But the truth is, the more correctly you align yourself, the less you need to think. The mind is a compass. When we turn it into a production line, we tire it, silence it, and even mislead it. But even in its current state, amidst the complexities of life, it reveals its true purpose, guidance, with surprising clarity. And when clarity arrives, calculations disappear, because a person moving in the right direction must plan their steps. Chapter 2. Order in physics, flow in life, chaos, imbalances, dissolutions. Physics teaches us a truth very early on. Order is not the result of control. It is a byproduct of harmony. The universe is nowhere perfectly static. Rather, it continues to exist in a constant state of becoming rather than collapsing. Galaxies rotate, atoms vibrate, particles appear and disappear. Therefore, chaos is not the problem of the universe. It is the way it operates. The famous physicist Richard Feynman profoundly states, "Nature is not simple, but it is a step." This statement is present simultaneously in both physics and life. Life appears complex, unpredictable, sometimes disordered, yet at its core, there is a compression. What we call chaos is often a sign of a larger order that we don't fully understand. Entropy, the second law of thermodynamics, states that everything is ordered at regular intervals. But the critical point that most people overlook is this: even as entropy increases, it remains locally ordered. A star is born, a life is lived, a consciousness takes shape. In other words, instead of the universe completely disintegrating, it creates temporary balances within this disintegration. Nobel laureate physicist Ilya Prigogine distinguishes this situation with the characteristics of disintegrating structures, stating, "Where balance is disrupted, order emerges." This idea applies not only to physics, but also to individual life. People generally thrive not when they are in complete control, but rather in moments of disintegration, dissolution, and the collapse of old structures. When a task is completed, when a relationship ends, when an identity collapses, most people perceive this as chaos. However, from a broader perspective, looking not just horizontally, this is simply a search for a new balance. The comfort zone kills people. The comfort zone is humanity's greatest enemy, because a person's true potential is revealed when faced with challenges. There's a famous saying, "Ships aren't protected in port because ships weren't made for ports." This saying is truly powerful, because the essence of life is taking risks, pushing boundaries, and venturing into the unknown. People generally don't want to put themselves in hopeless situations. But sometimes, the greatest transformation begins with pushing ourselves. If you can't do it today, life will force you to do it tomorrow. And often, real change comes this way. You find yourself forced in a way you didn't choose. In moments of fear, people use almost 100% of their potential. In moments of fear, people use almost 100% of their potential. In their comfort zones, this rate is even below 10%. Consider this. You come home from work very tired. Your head is full, your mind is tired, your body is exhausted. And suddenly, you experience a moment where you feel like you're in the middle of a desert. A dog is running towards you and is about to attack. So what happens next? Suddenly, you find yourself climbing a tree, or jumping onto the roof of a building, or escaping in a way you never imagined. And then you ask yourself, how did I run? How did I climb? How is this possible? This is the true state of your potential. You use it as long as you are alive. But you don't use the same potential in normal life because your comfort zone numbs you. Chaos, fear, and collapse, the fuel of real life. It's the same in physics. When energy enters a system, the system becomes more stable. But when the energy decreases or a shock occurs, the system collapses. People collapse in the same way. The moment of collapse is the moment of reshaping. Therefore, the end of a relationship, the end of a job, the collapse of an identity is actually a process of rebirth. People simply call it chaos. Yet this is the beginning of a more powerful order that the universe offers us. The greatest truth of life, discovering your potential. You haven't yet used your potential because life hasn't forced you to. But one day it will. And when that day comes, you will do things you couldn't do before. You will confront things you ran away from before. You will stand tall, even in moments of fear. Because when a person is challenged, they rediscover themselves. And this discovery is the most precious moment of life. Einstein's view of the universe leads to a similar perspective. He has a famous quote, "God does not play dice." What he means here is that there is no randomness in the universe. Even seemingly random things are bound by rules. In life, you often ask, why now? But physics reminds us that timing is usually related not to the mind's expectations, but to the system's ready-made formation. Consider a river. If the water runs out, it overflows. If you let it run completely free, it will find a cutting edge. In physics, this is called fluid dynamics. We continue to do this in life. The increase in control components increases. Flow distribution uses energy more efficiently. Physicist David Bohm summarized the relationship between order and consciousness as follows. Order is not about how things should be, but about how they relate to each other. Life is exactly like that. Problems often stem not from the outcome, but from the relationships we constantly establish. If something is resolved, it's not just a reduction in time. Sometimes it's the system's effort to maintain a more flexible structure from an overly rigid one. Therefore, teach the physical perspective. Every solution is not a loss. Some solutions lie in the precursor system of a more intelligent order. Those who capture the survivors are not the workers who cannot destroy chaos, but those who can see the order that chaos attempts to produce. Because the universe stops nothing, destroys nothing. Only patterns that are no longer useful are released. And perhaps true wisdom lies here. In physics, order arises from nourishment. In life, flow begins with the reduction of resistance. Chapter 3. 80% intuition, 20% reason, a personal equation. Why does this ratio work? At first glance, this ratio might seem like a trade-off, but from the outside, it looks scientific. The question immediately arises, how can 80% of life be managed by intuition? On the contrary, data shows that both the lives of high-performing individuals and this balance work far better than imagined. The strategy isn't about underestimating reason. It's about setting controllable limits in the right places. Neuroscience tells us this clearly. The brain works a few seconds before the decision-making process begins, even before we notice the hidden decision-making intervals. In the experiments of Benjamin Libet and later modern neurologists, there is a measurable difference between a person saying, "I've decided now," and the brain's programmatic response to that call. In other words, reason usually doesn't make the decision. It justifies the judgment. This is where intuition comes in. Intuition is not a mystical ability. Therefore, success is the ability to process data, experiences, mistakes, achievements, and emotional performance accumulated over the years extremely quickly and unconsciously. Nobel laureate psychologist Daniel Kahneman described this as the fast system. According to him, intuition is a much older and more powerful mechanism than slow and analytical thinking. So why 80% intuition, 20% reason? Because intelligent actions work. They proceed step by step, measure, compare, and analyze. However, this method only works when there is limited data. Life is full of limitless variables: human relationships, opportunities, timing, risks. These cannot be precisely calculated. Even in physics, precise predictions cannot be made in complex systems. So trying to solve all of life with mathematics will lock the system. The famous physicist Albert Einstein said the following about the decision-making process: "The intuitive mind is a sacred free spirit. The intelligent mind is a faithful servant." In modern man, the servant is king. In other words, we don't control our minds. The intelligent mind controls us. Because every aspect of modern life relies on rationalization, logic, analysis, measurement, and programming. However, intelligence doesn't always show the right path. Therefore, differences between minds widen, diversity increases, and we are pushed towards indecision. Choosing something becomes difficult. There is a better option for everything. The choice is compared to a better option. The result? Opportunities are missed because intelligence expects perfection. Intuition, the source of speed. This is where intuition comes in. Intuition is the mind's speed of making quick decisions. Intuition finds the right option directly without analyzing the data. This is how the speed of intuition is achieved. People who make decisions based on their intuition progress faster, seize opportunities faster, grow faster. However, there's an important point here. Speed alone isn't enough. Intuition is fast, but it's not always accurate. Intuition can sometimes act like an emotional reflex. Therefore, intuition needs to be tested. This is where reason comes in. The 80% intuition, 20% reason rule. I like to explain it like this. Intuition, 80%. Reason, 20%. So, intuition makes decisions, provides speed, and guides. Reason tests, verifies, directs, and helps adapt this intuition to life. This ratio is a balanced approach. Without intuition, reason leads to indecision. Without reason, intuition can produce inaccurate copies. Therefore, the two must work together. Reason, give it good tasks. Reason can be your strongest ally. But as long as you make it king, it diminishes you. Therefore, use your mind in this way. Treat it well. Teach it to think big. Teach it to stand tall. Teach it to solve problems. The mind should not be a commander limiting you with, don't do this, don't do that, but a helper guiding you with, do this, try that. Last words. Before bedtime, give your brain a good task. There's a very important detail here. The last words you say before bed determine the task your brain will work on throughout the night. The brain doesn't sleep. It works during sleep. We just aren't aware of it. Therefore, don't go to sleep with bad thoughts. Don't say things that will harm you before bed. Don't fill your brain with words you don't understand, words that inspire fear. Instead, we will succeed. I'm on the right track. I am strong. I am recovering. Words like this, because the brain will already be occupied with something. So at least let what it's occupied with be something good. That's how the brain works. The brain works throughout the night too. It listens to intuition, tests logic, digests experiences. And if you give it a good task, that task becomes a reality for you in life. Chapter 4: The Timing System. Why some things constantly fail. Resistance, early signals, and the right moment. One of the most frustrating pieces of information for the human schema is this: we strive for something we should do right. We don't prepare. We want it. We even make sacrifices. But it still doesn't happen. Doors don't open. Conditions don't arise. Events behave as if they're going to appear out of nowhere. Most people call this bad luck, incompetence, or fate. But science, especially physics and complex systems theory, can approach this situation from a very different angle: timing. In physics, no process proceeds without timing. For a failure to occur, not only the right package, but also the right conditions and the right moment are necessary. For example, theoretically, a nuclear mixture forms. Atoms combine. But in practice, except for stars, this is almost impossible. Why? Because the necessary temperature, pressure, and timing don't occur simultaneously. Life works similarly. The renowned physicist Ilya Prigogine, in his views on order and regularity, states, "For a system to transform, it must first become unstable." In other words, for something to truly emerge, the system must abandon its previous state. Human change often begins with the feeling of, "It's not happening." Resistance is not actually an obstacle, but a sign of insufficient preparation. There is a crucial distinction here. Some things don't happen because they are wrong. Some things don't happen because they are too early. The human mind struggles to make this distinction because it focuses on the outcome. It looks at, did it happen? However, intuition and systems are process-oriented. Something not happening at the right time often prepares you for something else. In quantum physics, there is a concept known as the measurement problem. A particle exists in multiple possibilities before it is measured. When the moment of measurement arrives, the wave function collapses and a single result emerges. Many decisions and events in life are similar. Possibilities exist, but the moment of collapse has not yet arrived. The more you push, the more resistance the system generates. When we misinterpret this resistance, we get what we want. Persistence increases, stress increases, energy decreases. Our field of vision narrows. This is precisely when people ask, "Why isn't this happening to me?" Perhaps the real question is, why doesn't it have to happen yet? Psychology and neuroscience also express this perspective. The brain cannot sustain an identity or life structure for which it is not ready. For example, when a person with a high need for internal security takes great risks before building that security, sabotage begins at a subconscious level. Decisions are postponed, opportunities are missed, and accidental setbacks multiply. This is not the universe's punishment. It is the system's protective measures. The famous theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking said in a speech, "The universe responds to results, not impatience." Consistency is crucial here. There is a difference between wanting something and being able to experience it. Timing is presented in a way that bridges the gap between these 2 points. That's why some opportunities fall apart just as they are about to knock on your door. Because you're not yet ready for the daily responsibilities, the solitude, the pace, or the cost of that life. This isn't a failure, it's a delayed adjustment process. What's expected is this. When a person usually gives up on something or shifts their focus elsewhere, the problem that previously resisted begins to resolve. Because the resistance disappears, the system loosens, the flow returns. In physics, this is called minimum energy loss. Nature chooses the path of least resistance. Timing teaches us difficulty doesn't always mean you're on the wrong path. Resistance is sometimes a waiting system, not a change of direction. Something that comes early isn't always the right thing. And perhaps the most important structural lesson: just because something doesn't happen doesn't mean you can't overcome it. Sometimes life slows you down at precisely the right time. When the right moment arrives, there's no need to exaggerate anything. Events accelerate, doors open, people appear, conditions become favorable. Then, returning to the previous point, you say, "It's a good thing it wasn't done then." Because some things can't fail. The time hasn't come yet. Chapter 5. Energizing choices, depleting goals. Does doing the right thing exhaust or nourish you? Most people don't find setting goals difficult. What's difficult is why these goals exhaust them. Because, contrary to popular belief, most goals don't move us forward. They drain our energy without making a difference. The key distinctions are: choices energize, goals exhaust. Scientifically, this is quite clear. Neuroscience states that the human brain makes a significant difference between meaning and reward. If a goal is solely dependent on external rewards, money, status, approval, the brain perceives it as a source of stress in the short term. Cortisol increases, motivation is temporary, and burnout accelerates. In contrast, the freedom of an internally meaningful choice activates serotonin along with dopamine. That is, the person is both motivated and balanced. So why do people work in such frequent intervals? Because fragmentation is the safest cover for taking risks. In psychology, this is called avoidance. People often prefer not to make any choices at all because they are afraid of choosing the wrong goal. However, there is a very basic rule in physics. If energy does not enter a system, the system loses its content. The same is true in life. A person who remains neutral is not actually neutral. They slowly disintegrate. Another important point: society teaches us concrete information. However, this is an incomplete understanding, both formally and personally. Physics requires a minimum amount of energy. Nature accomplishes a task with the least possible energy. The same is true for choices that are in harmony with life. Constantly exhausting, difficult goals are usually not right. They are merely goals determined by the ego. An interesting commonality emerges in the relationships of successful people. Instead of chasing goals, they repeatedly choose the decisions that give them energy. For a physicist, this sometimes involves a single problem that persists for a long time, while sometimes it is about being able to recognize and stop things when they are going in the wrong direction. The fundamental reason why people seem so inept at this is actually very simple, but it's hidden somewhere where very few people are different. Most people never ask themselves this question: who is this goal making me? In other words, what kind of person am I becoming as I move toward this goal? Am I calmer or more tense? Have I lost more strength, or am I more tired and detached? If a goal transforms you into a more stressed, more tired, more impatient, and more distant self, then that goal, no matter how healthy, how bright, or how attractive it may seem, is not sustainable in the long run, because a person cannot carry the presence of someone who harms them. In reality, friends, everything that is right for you starts with you, not from the outside, not in the goals of others, not in the patterns that society calls right. Everything starts off closed. Therefore, sometimes you need to stop. Really stop. Be silent. This isn't about silencing yourself. It's about silencing the external voice. And ask yourself this question: who am I right now? This question is far more powerful than you think, because you've already gathered so much information, so much experience, so much guidance about what you want. It doesn't matter anymore which is right and which is wrong. What matters is this: who are you right now? Believe me, you don't need to wait for this question to arise. The answer is already hidden within you. Sometimes the answer comes immediately. Sometimes it doesn't. And that's perfectly normal. If the answer doesn't come, that's also an answer. Then ask yourself, how can I find the answer to this question? Where is the path that will show me this answer? And then let it go. Really. Sometimes the answer comes hours later. Sometimes days later. Sometimes it becomes clear in your mind in a conversation, sometimes in a sentence, and sometimes unexpectedly. Or what if there's no answer? You understand which step you need to take. It becomes clear which direction you need to look. Life often doesn't give us direct answers, but it gives direction. It leaves a sign. It opens the door. And when you truly learn to listen, the door that was always there becomes noticeably more resilient. Life is a bit like that, not forcing answers, but allowing them to come to you when you're ready. Ultimately, what's right doesn't always exhaust you. What's truly right is the statement that nourishes and develops you. Energizing choices move you forward. Goals that drain your energy only keep you busy. And perhaps the most critical difference lies here. Those who progress in life build their goals not by forcing them, but by listening to their choices. Chapter 6. Values are invisible force fields, traumas, basic needs, and true motivation. Most people don't truly understand why they get stuck in the same cycles, why they experience similar problems over and over again, or why they're in a state described as potential but unable to move forward. This is because most people look at things, but not at values. Yet values function like visible force fields in physics. They are invisible, difficult to measure, but they completely determine the direction of movement. Traumas play a significant role here. When most people hear the word trauma, they associate it only with big dramatic events. But neuroscience tells us that trauma isn't something that always happens. It's often something that isn't experienced. Not feeling safe, not being seen, not feeling valued enough, or constantly growing up on edge. These unconsciously shape a person's core value map. For a child, the most basic needs are clear: security, acceptance, and belonging. When these needs are sufficiently met, new values are formed in the brain in survival mode. For example, freedom becomes extremely important for someone who has been controlled in the past. For a group, success becomes indispensable because performance has become the only way to gain approval. At this point, what we perceive as motivation is actually the voice of a half-day need. This is also where people's self-ignorance stems from. Because a person thinks that the decisions they make are based on their experiences at home, but most decisions are guided by an old emotional memory. A similar situation exists in physics. A particle is under the influence of the field it is in. Although it appears to move freely on its own, it actually follows the curve of the field. People also walk within the curve of their values. Therefore, some people can never feel comfortable no matter what they do. Because the goals of their principles are not aligned with their true values. Outwardly, apparent actions create a constant inner stagnation. This restlessness is not laziness. It's not restlessness. It's a disharmony. When a person's own value system collapses, the brain perceives this as a threat, and the energy returns. The good news is, just as everything has a cause, it also has a solution. Values don't change. Differences can be rearranged. When trauma is resolved, the false motivations built upon it are also listed. For the first time, the person gives an honest answer to the question, "Why do I want this?" And that's when a significant turning point occurs. Life no longer begins with pushing, but with moving forward. Because for the first time, the person acts according to inner harmony, not external expectations. In conclusion, values are silent forces whispering to us. We get stuck when we reach certain points, but when we become aware, our direction becomes clear. A person can only truly focus on where they are going when they understand where they came from. Chapter 7. The real criterion is not wanting, but being ready. The concept of harmony with the universe and preparedness. If you were to summarize the reason why most people fail to achieve things in life in a single word, I didn't want it enough. However, this is one of the biggest misconceptions of modern self-help narratives. There is no such mechanism as wanting in physics or biology. There is only adaptation, capacity, and timing. A seed doesn't want to become a tree. It sprouts when the soil, water, light, and temperature are suitable. This depends not on the seed's desire, but on its adaptation to the conditions. The situation is no different for humans. Wanting is a mental signal. However, being prepared means that the entire system can carry this signal. What does being prepared mean? It's not just about having knowledge. It's not just about causing something to happen. It's never just about the dream coming true. Being prepared means that mental, emotional, and physical activities work in the same direction. Neuroscience explains it this way. The brain perceives a goal not as an opportunity, but as a threat. Therefore, even when some people desperately want something, they constantly procrastinate, sabotage, or ask, "Why isn't it happening?" This is because the system isn't yet ready to expand. There's a similar concept in physics: resonance. A system strengthens when it encounters a wave that matches its natural properties. If it doesn't, it's either unaffected or damaged. People work the same way. Opportunities that come into life are lasting if they are compatible with available resources. Otherwise, they either flee from the individual or overwhelm them. That's why some people aren't happy when they achieve a goal. Because the goal has been reached, but the person doesn't yet have an identity. They earn money, but can't manage it. They enter relationships, but can't maintain them. Power grows old, but they are crushed under its weight. The problem isn't the goal, but the level of preparation. Preparation is usually visible. It's silent. From the outside, it appears as if nothing is happening. Yet so much is happening. Beliefs are being reshaped. Old fears are being overcome. Identity is gradually expanding. The muscle of patience is developing. Emotional warmth is increasing. The reason this process is hindered is that preparation is applauded. No one congratulates you because you are not yet ready. But the universe's system notices this. Because the universe's reward is not general, it is given based on experience. There is a very important distinction here. Wanting looks to the future. Being ready works in the present. Wanting excites you. Being ready protects you. But that's why some things constantly fail. Because you are not yet ready. Because there is nothing you can create in that thing. Maybe that thing will isolate you. Maybe it will require you to take on responsibility. Maybe you will have to give up your old expenses. And the system keeps the door closed to protect you. This is where wisdom comes in. Sometimes this is not a punishment for delay, but a period of preparation. When you understand this, you stop fighting life. Why isn't it happening? Instead of asking, why am I not transforming? You start asking, why am I not transforming? And interestingly, when this question begins to be asked, many things accelerate again. Because harmony with the universe is established not by demanding, but by speaking the same language. When you are ready, you don't need to search. The door is normally open. Chapter 8. Is intuition infallible, or are we the ones who make mistakes? Distinguishing mental confusion, fear, and intuition. There are three inner voices that people most often confuse: intuition, fear, and mental noise. And most people blame their intuition for their mistakes. But the problem is usually not with intuition itself, but with their inability to distinguish which voice they are listening to. First, a clear distinction can be made. The mind speaks. Fear screams. Intuition whispers. Intuition never rushes. It doesn't create panic. It doesn't force you into a desire. It doesn't say, you must do it immediately. Fear, on the other hand, is the opposite. It is urgent, threatening, and based on many past experiences. Mental confusion constantly generates possibilities. What if this happens? What if that happens? The critical question of classification is, how can a person distinguish these? Because from the outside, all three seem like inner voices. The nature of intuition. Wisdom before knowledge. Intuition doesn't arise from learned knowledge. It stems from a synthesis of lived experiences and subconscious patterns. The brain takes thousands of known pieces of data, body language, tone of voice, energy of the environment, timing, the results of similar moments in your past, and presents them as a single entity without putting them into words. Therefore, intuition often seems causeless, but it isn't. When people confuse intuition with something else, they often say, I had a feeling, but it didn't fit my logic. The error lies in logic. Logic only works with known data, but intuition extends beyond its limits. Why does fear feel like intuition? Because fear is also a signal. Heart rate increases, stomach contracts, muscles tense. That's why people mistake fear for an inner voice. But fear is always connected to the past. If a painful experience has been had before, the brain generates an alarm to relive a similar situation. Fear wants to protect you, but it doesn't want to help you grow. Intuition, on the other hand, wants to help you grow from a safe place. Therefore, fear restricts. Intuition expands. Fear says, flee. Intuition says, be careful. Although the difference is subtle, the results are entirely different. Mental confusion, the most dangerous confusion. Mental confusion is the internalization of internalized voices. Family, society, learned histories, social media, expectations. They all speak at once, and as these plants multiply, intuition becomes inaudible. Most people say, silence my intuition. No, intuition is never silenced. It is only suppressed. When the mind speaks too much, intuition responds, because intuition doesn't work in noise. It needs silence. Practical indicators for distinguishing intuition from fear. To determine whether something is intuition, fear, or reasoning, look for the following. Intuition provides calmness and creates clarity. Fear creates tension and urgency. Reasoning creates indecision and fatigue. The body usually relaxes after intuition. The body tenses after fear. The person becomes exhausted after mental confusion. What are the characteristics of another strong indicator? Intuition remains consistent over time. Fear fluctuates. Sometimes it increases. Sometimes it changes. But mental noise constantly shifts shape. Why does a person become unable to trust their intuition? Because from childhood, they are raised with external references. They are trained to suppress intuition instead of developing it with phrases like, "Adults know better," "Be logical," and "Don't trust your feelings." Later, as adults, they become unable to make decisions and become dependent on imitating others. In fact, intuition is like a muscle. It atrophies when unused, but strengthens with loss. Conclusion: intuition is infallible. The interpreting mind is wrong. Intuition rarely errs. However, people confuse the signal given by intuition with fear, filter it through mental filters, and then misinterpret it. Then they say, "I had a feeling, but it was wrong." What actually happens is this: the intuition was right, but you translated it into the language of fear. Once this is realized, people no longer take it seriously, but learn to recognize their true feelings. And this is the quietest but most powerful guidance in life. Because intuition guides you not by shouting, but with a silence that you will understand and hear. Chapter 9. Moments of Decision. The big trajectories of small choices. The direction of life changes unnoticed. Most people look for major turning points in their lives in dramatic moments. A big decision, a big risk, a big loss, or a big success. Yet real changes of direction are almost always silent. They begin with small choices that no one applauds, no one notices, and often the person themselves doesn't even care about. A morning spent at home, avoiding a conversation, an unfinished thought, suppressing an emotion. These seem insignificant, but these are the moments when the trajectory of life changes millimeter by millimeter. And years later, one asks oneself, how did I get here? So why do people skip these moments? Because it requires patience. And patience is the weakest muscle of modern man. The human brain wants quick results. Neuroscience tells us this clearly. The brain reacts more strongly to short-term and long-term processes. Therefore, people change the direction of something that is about to bear fruit. Instead of waiting for a process to continue, they give up. Instead of waiting for everything to become clear, they make hasty decisions. Impatience is not an innocent trait here. It's a hidden factor that spoils decisions. What does impatience confuse? An impatient person judges something incomplete, unopened, and unfinished as wrong. They label a path that hasn't yet yielded results as not working. They see an idea that hasn't yet blossomed as a waste of time. Yet many correct decisions are initially quiet, uncertain, and even boring. Big changes often feel like nothing is happening at first. Impatience does the following. It disrupts the process. It interrupts the timing. It constantly changes direction. And the more often a person procrastinates, the less progress they can make on any path. Why does frequent change feel reassuring? Because change gives a person a temporary sense of control. It gives the feeling of, I'm doing something. But this is often not real progress. It's an illusion of movement. It takes time for a seed to sprout. But if an impatient person digs at the air every day, the seed will never grow. The same is true in life. Constantly checking, constantly changing, constantly questioning. These are not progress. They are interference. Why are moments of decision silent? Because it's not the decision itself that changes life, but its repetition. It's not about getting up early once. It's about making it a habit. It's not about choosing the right path once. It's about sticking to it. It's not about being brave once. It's about maintaining your courage. But an impatient person doesn't repeat, because repetition delays the result. When the result is delayed, belief crumbles. Is the real problem patience or trust? Actually, the two are interconnected. Impatience is often part of a lack of self-confidence. When a person doesn't know the right direction, they constantly change direction. A person who doesn't trust their inner compass acts according to external signals. One day, they have a reason. The next day, they've given up. One day, you're certain. The next day, you're filled with doubts. This fluctuation disrupts the course of your life. Conclusion: small decisions shape big directions. Life is shaped not by dramatic moments, but by the small choices you make. And people often miss these moments because they are impatient. They want instant results, instant emotions, instant perceptions. But some decisions require constant adjustment to determine whether they are right or wrong. And perhaps the most accurate question is, am I really in the wrong future, or am I giving up too soon? Because sometimes life doesn't intervene. We interfere with it through our impatience. Chapter 10. Intuition. Is body memory a reflection of the brain? Intuition is a fleeting feeling that most people describe as an inner voice. But does this voice truly tell the future? Or is it an echo from the depths of the past? The critical point here is this: intuition is not something produced by the brain. Intuition is nothing more than a rapid replay of recorded experiences accumulated over the years. 1. What is body memory? Body memory is what all parts of the body, not just the mind, remember. A smell, a sound, a touch, or an environment. The body can automatically remember something that even a computer's memory doesn't. That's why sometimes you think, I don't know why, but I don't feel good in this environment. The strange thing is, the problem often stems from a past we don't remember. 2. Intuition, actually accelerated data processing. Your brain scans your past experiences in seconds and presents a conclusion in a three-dimensional way. This isn't a slow life process. It's automatic programming. For example, if you've experienced something bad in a room before, if you've been hurt by someone before, if you felt threatened by a word or appearance, your body doesn't forget these things. The body quickly recognizes it and sends you a signal to stay here or move away. This signal is sometimes called intuition, but sometimes it's just a warning from people's memory. 3. The fine line between intuition and fear. The difference between intuition and fear, perhaps the most critical distinction, can become apparent. Intuition comes suddenly, is a clear and calm warning, is the body recognizing things it has experienced before. Fear is often influenced by past traumas. It creates intense emotions and panic. It's the body exaggerating its danger signal. In other words, intuition is a calm warning. Fear, on the other hand, is a loud alarm. That's why intuition is sometimes misunderstood because people confuse fear with intuition. 4. How body memory can deceive us. The most important point here is body memory doesn't always reflect reality because the body perceives a past trauma as a danger. Therefore, when the same situation is repeated, the body reacts in the same way. Here's how it happens. If you were cheated on in a past relationship, in a new relationship, a similar look, a similar word, a similar situation, your body automatically sounds an alarm, saying it will happen again. But this doesn't mean the current person is actually the same person. It's just reacting to the shadow of the past. Therefore, intuition can sometimes turn into blind judgment. 5. Is intuition right, or is your body deceiving you? The answer to this question lies in something most people don't understand. Intuition is not a truth, but a warning. It's our job to interpret the warning correctly. Intuition is not a decision, but data. Using data correctly requires a process at home. 6. Using intuition correctly. The clearest way to understand whether intuition is correct is this. Intuition: calm, clear, concise, and stress-free. Fear: fast, noisy, exaggerated, and causes physical discomfort. Look at how the magnitude of something energizes you. If something energizes you, it may be sending the right signal to your body. If something causes fatigue, pressure, or relaxation, this is usually the effect of fear or past trauma. 7. Conclusion. Is intuition a message from the universe? If intuition is a message from the universe, then the source of this message is not fate, not an angel, not simply data accumulated from the past. It enables the body to rapidly synthesize and present stimuli transmitted from past experiences. However, this does not render intuition worthless. On the contrary, intuition is one of the most powerful tools leading us to self-knowledge. Chapter 11. The language of the soul. Emotions are not just meaning, they are a roadmap. Emotions are one of the purest and truest forms of human nature. They are not just feelings, but also signal flares. Emotions not only help us find answers to the question, which cycle is happening right now, but also open doors to questions like, where is this coming from? Which area does it not fit into? Which boundary has been crossed? Which worthlessness has been touched upon? However, emotions are one of the most challenging areas for most people. This is because the language of expression has been wrongly taught in the modern world. People are told, control your emotions. Don't surrender to emotions. Don't let emotions control you. All these expressions show weakness, yet their true function is to protect and guide us. 1. The biggest reason for misunderstanding. Emotions. Judging emotions with logic. Emotions are the language of life and soul, not logic. Logic, like mathematics, offers clear calculations, right/wrong, yes/no. But emotions are like a map. They show you where you are, which direction you're going, and where the danger lies. Therefore, judging with logical reasoning is like misreading the map. For example, if you love someone but constantly feel uncomfortable when you're with them, this doesn't just mean choosing that person. It could also mean this person is pushing my boundaries or disregarding my values. Emotions are often not a momentary event, but a re-triggering of a similar event from the past. Therefore, separating them directly from the present person or event is often misleading. 2. Miscategorization of emotions. Many people reduce emotions to just a few categories: happy, sad, angry, scared, excited. but emotions are deeper and more complex. For example, anger often stems not from a feeling of loss of control, but from a feeling of limiting power. Grief isn't just about loss. It's also about devaluation, misunderstanding, abandonment, or the language of imagination. Fear doesn't always mean danger. Sometimes it's a fear of the unknown and change. Guilt often stems not from a hasty urge to deliver news, but from the feeling that we've wasted something valuable. Emotions must be read and understood in this deeper way, because emotions tell much more than what is experienced on the surface. 3. Emotions are a delayed message, not a quick reaction. Emotions often arise as an immediate reaction. However, they are often details of the past. Therefore, emotions recreate similar events in the past, not the present event. For example, when you offer criticism at the human level, some immediately become defensive, some engage in an internal struggle, some retreat to their tea. These different reactions actually stem not so much from the criticism itself, but from a repetition of the person's past reactions to criticism. Therefore, emotions reveal a map of past wounds. 4. Misdirection of emotions. Body's restlessness, mind's blame. Emotions often convey a sense of danger. However, this danger doesn't always come from the outside. Most often, it's related to a part of ourselves that doesn't want to relive a past event. And in this case, the mind intervenes and tries to connect the emotion to a logical reason. This leads to a misinterpretation of the emotion. For example, when you can say, "This person isn't the right person for me," the mind might label it as, "I don't like this person." But the real reason might be, "This relationship is triggering a trauma from my past." In this case, the language of the emotions becomes, "This relationship is hurting me." But the mind misinterprets this. "I hate these people." This misinterpretation leads to the acceptance of others' wrongdoings. 5. Emotions tell us, "What should we do?" Not, "What should we pay attention to?" Emotions are like a traveler. However, the information itself does not offer a solution. What emotions usually tell us is, "This situation is pushing my limits. This person is belittling my values. This environment is harming me. This choice is diminishing me. This goal is wearing me down. This relationship is draining me." Emotions show us the area we need to pay attention to, not what we should do. 6. Interpreting emotions correctly. To correctly interpret emotions, you can use these 5 steps. 1. Recognize the emotion. What is inside you? Anger, sadness, fear, or despair? 2. Investigate the source of the emotion. What event triggered this emotion? What does this event remind me of? 3. Observe your body's reaction. Heartbeat, breathing, muscle tension, stomach ache. Is your body telling you something in terms of size? 4. See emotion as a signal. Emotion is a signal that directs you in a certain direction. This signal indicates which boundary has been violated or which value has been damaged. 7. Conclusion. Emotions are the most accurate map of the soul. Emotions are not just a map of things, they are a roadmap. Emotions don't tell us whether something is right or wrong. They show us that something isn't good for us. The language of emotions is crucial, because when emotions are not read correctly, a person changes in their inner world, makes wrong choices, and misses out on life as a whole. If the language of emotions is understood correctly, a person feels better about themselves, defines their boundaries more clearly, finds their true values, and builds their life in a more domesticated way. 12. Inner empire. Overcoming the limits of your own mind. Within yourself, people often look for their greatest enemies outside themselves. But the real battle is fought within the mind. Inner ownership is not the art of managing one's own mind. In a deeper sense, it is the process of dismantling the old stories within oneself and building a new identity. Because most people, besides survival, focus on the remaining connections. I will succeed if these conditions are met. This person had this trait. I was changing. My life will improve if this opportunity comes. But the real problem isn't the external process. It's waiting within the mind, repeating the story of I can't do this. 1. What is the inner empire? This is the self-governing system that a person builds in their own mind. Within this system, values, fears, traumas, self-image, and answers to the question, who am I, all work together. This governing system can sometimes be healthy and sometimes cumulative. A toxic system constantly restricts a person, saying, you can't, repeating, you're not good enough, and ultimately, the person becomes a prisoner of their own stored ideas. What builds the inner empire is usually past traumas, experiences of rejection, failures, and internal critics. 2. Internal stories, self-limiting constructed reality. The mind transforms its story into a narrative. These stories are eventually labeled as, I believe this. For example, I am a failure. I am not worthy of love. I can't form good relationships. I can't make money. I can't speak. I'm shy. These sentences are not just words. They are commands that the mind establishes as a governing system. These commands prevent a person from taking action, because when the mind says, I can't, the person even gives up trying. And when they give up trying, life seems to prove the truth of these commands. This is a vicious cycle. I can't implies try, implies fail, implies, look, I can't do it. Internally, breaking this cycle. 3. The first step to breaking this cycle, knowing your own story. The greatest power in a person's mind is temporary, because something changes unless it is noticed. Therefore, the first step should be, listen to your inner monologue. What sentences are you saying? What words are constantly repeated? What thoughts are holding you back? Many of these thoughts are sentences that define you. People often say, this is who I am. But the sentence, this is who I am, is actually a program of the mind. And this program can be changed. 4. Creating a new identity. Rewriting yourself. The inner empire is about creating a new identity. This identity is not built on old stories. It opens a new page. To create a new identity, the following steps should be followed. 1. Identify the old story. Ask yourself, what story inside me is limiting me? 2. Find the source of the story. Where does this story come from? Is it a trauma, a misunderstanding, a rejection? 3. Rewrite the story. Replace the old story with a new sentence. For example, instead of, I am a failure, I am worth trying, and I am improving through learning. This new sentence is not just a sentence. It becomes a new command for the mind. 4. Support the new identity with behaviors. The new identity is built not only with thought, but also with behavior. Therefore, taking small steps is necessary. Learning something new for 10 minutes every day. Taking a small social step every day. Continuing to progress in something every day. Experiencing a small part of a fear every day. These steps allow the new structure of the mind to be accepted as real. 5. Why don't people know what to do? because most people's minds are fragmented within themselves. On one hand, there's the thought, I want to be better. On the other hand, there's the thought, I deserve this. This thought creates a constant battle within the person's inner world. The reason for this battle is that the person doesn't know their own worth or doesn't read their own story correctly. When people want to change something, they don't actually want to change themselves. Because change means confronting the unknown, and the unknown is often one's own characteristics. Chapter 12. The Inner Empire, Overcoming the Limits of Your Own Mind. From within, people often look for their greatest enemies outside themselves. But the real battle is fought within the mind. Inner ownership isn't the art of managing one's own mind. It's a deeper process of dismantling old narratives within and building a new identity. Because most people are limited by survival, as well as, I will succeed if these conditions are met. This person had this. I was changing it. My life will improve if this opportunity comes. But the real problem isn't the external process. It's waiting within the repeated, I can't do this narrative of the mind. 1. What is the inner empire? It is the self-governing system a person builds within their own mind. This system includes values, fears, traumas, self-awareness, and who am I? The answers to the question, they all work together. This management system can sometimes be healthy and sometimes deeply ingrained. A toxic system constantly restricts the individual, saying, you can't, repeating, you're not good enough, and ultimately making the person a prisoner of their own ingrained beliefs. This is what builds the inner empire, often past traumas, experiences of rejection, failures, and internal critics. 2. Inner stories, self-limiting constructed reality. The mind transforms its story into a narrative. These stories are one day labeled as, I believe these things. For example, I am a failure. I am not worthy of love. I can't form good relationships. I can't make money. I can't speak. I'm shy. These sentences are not just words. They are commands that the mind establishes as a management system. These commands hinder the individual's progress. Because when the mind says, I can't, the person even gives up trying. And when they give up trying, life seems to prove these commands right. This is a vicious cycle. I can't implies, try implies, fail implies, see, I can't do it. Internally, breaking this cycle. 3. The first step to breaking this cycle, knowing your own story. The greatest power in a person's mind is temporary because something changes unless it is noticed. Therefore, the first step should be listen to your inner monologue. What sentences are you saying? What words are constantly repeating? What thoughts are stopping you? Many of these thoughts are sentences that define you. People often say, this is who I am. But the sentence, this is who I am, is actually a program of the mind. And this program can be changed. 4. Creating a new identity, rewriting yourself. The inner empire is about creating a new identity. This identity isn't built on old stories. It opens a new chapter. To create a new identity, the following steps should be taken. 1. Identify the old story. Ask yourself, what story inside me is limiting me? 2. Find the source of the story. Where does this story come from? Is it a trauma, a misunderstanding, a rejection? 3. Rewrite the story. Replace the old story with a new sentence. For example, instead of I am a failure, I am worth trying and I am improving through learning. This new sentence is not just a sentence, it becomes a new command for the mind. 4. support the new identity with behaviors. A new identity is built not only with thoughts, but also with behaviors. Therefore, taking small steps is necessary. Learning something new for 10 minutes every day. Taking a small social step every day. Consistently progressing in something every day. Doing a small part of overcoming a fear every day. These steps allow the new structure of the mind to be accepted as real. 5. Why don't people know what to do? Because most people's minds are fragmented within themselves. On the one hand, I want to be better. On the other hand, I deserve this. This fragmentation creates a constant war within the person's inner world. The reason for this war is that the person does not know their own worth or does not read their own story correctly. When people want to change something, they don't actually want to change themselves. Because change is about confronting the unknown, and the unknown is often one's own characteristics. 6. Who should I ask for help from? Where should I begin? During this process, people often think, who will look after me? Who should I ask for help from? It's important to know, this change begins with your inner decision, not individual choices. However, if you want support, a therapist, especially one using methods like therapeutic behavior therapy, or EMDR, a coach for goal setting and change, a mentor for spiritual/mental support, a trusted friend who listens without judgment. These people can help you see your own story. But most importantly, you are not independent, because the greatest power in this process is your own inner voice. 7. The quickest solution. Ask yourself 3 questions. The clearest and most practical solution to this section lies in these 3 questions. 1. What is the story holding me back? What sentence does this story begin with? 2. What is this story trying to teach me? Is this story a warning, a boundary, or a source of fear? 3. With what new sentence can I experience this story? Will this new sentence set me free? Organize these 3 questions every day. It's the quickest way to reprogram your mind. In modern man, the servant is king. That is, we don't control our minds. It is intelligence that controls us. Because every aspect of modern life is based on rationalization, logic, analysis, measurement, and programming. However, intelligence doesn't always show the right path. Thus, the mind's distinctions expand, diversity increases, and it pushes us into indecision. Choosing something becomes difficult. There is a better option for everything. The choice is compared to a better option. The result? Opportunities are missed, because intelligence expects perfection. Intuition, the source of speed. This is where intuition comes in. Intuition is the mind's speed of rapid decision-making. Intuition finds the right thing directly without analyzing the data. This is how the speed of intuition is achieved. People who make decisions based on their intuition progress faster, seize opportunities faster, grow faster. However, there's an important point here. Speed alone isn't enough. Intuition is fast, but it's not always accurate. Intuition can sometimes act like an emotional reflex. Therefore, intuition needs to be tested. This is where reason comes in. The 80% intuition, 20% reason rule. I like to explain it like this. Intuition, 80%, reason, 20%. So intuition makes decisions, provides speed, and guides. Reason tests, verifies, directs, and helps adapt this intuition to life. This ratio is a balanced approach. Without intuition, reason leads to indecision. Without reason, intuition can produce inaccurate copies. Therefore, the two must work together. The mind. Give it good tasks. Your mind can be your strongest ally, but as long as you let it dominate you, it will diminish you. Therefore, use your mind in this way. Treat it well. Teach it to think big. Teach it to stand tall. Teach it to solve problems. The mind should be a helper guiding you by saying, do this, try that. Not a commander limiting you by saying, don't do this, don't do that. Last words. Before bedtime, give your brain a good task. There's a very important detail here. The last words you say before bed determine the task your brain will work on throughout the night. The brain doesn't sleep. It works during sleep. We just aren't aware of it. Therefore, don't go to sleep with bad thoughts. Don't say things that will harm you before bed. Don't fill your brain with words you don't understand, words that inspire fear. Instead, we will succeed. I'm on the right track. I am strong. I am recovering. Words like these, because the brain will already be occupied with something. So at least let what it's occupied with be something good. That's how the brain works. The brain works even at night. It listens to intuition, tests logic, digests experiences. And if you give it a good task, that task becomes a reality in your life.